course, have also for our online events a code of conduct. It says, be excellent to each other, where free speech is important, intolerance of any kind will not be tolerated. We never had issues before, especially not with our smooth meetup.ai community, and we hope that it just stays like that. But we just have to say that if we see something that is going on in the chat or in your video panels, then we deserve the right to kick you out. All right, and now enjoy the event, and that's it from our side.
All right. So just before I bring Sukesh on stage, if this is your first time with us in meetup.ai, please let us know in the chat. It's always great to see new people joining us, especially now that we have digital events. Also, let us know if you're not coming from Berlin, because this is one of the funnest things to do now, is our ability to actually connect and talk to people from all over the world. So if you're coming from Germany or if you come from outside, let us know. Me and meetup.ai as well, we're super excited about any feedback and any ideas. So I'll be also sharing my LinkedIn on the chat, and feel free to shoot me a message if you didn't like something or if you loved something, if you have some ideas. The second best thing about basically doing digital events is our ability to bring speakers from outside of Berlin as well and outside of Germany. And Sukesh is very much in that box. So I'm extremely excited that he managed to get the time to talk to us today. About the code of conduct, old hands in meetup.ai know what I was going to say. We never got anybody kicked, but I know this will happen one day. I just hope that today is not that day. Let's just try, keep pushing that. Like, law of large numbers, I think this is probably the 40th event that we do together with ThoughtWorks, so one day it will happen. But let's push it for another event. Let's just push it a bit more. We will be using Slido for questions. I would also be taking a look at the chat, so if anything interesting pops there, so feel free to write it over there if you have comments, if you have anything else. Also in Slido, upvote the questions that you like, because if by the case we have too many questions, it's always nice to see which ones the audience likes the most. I also apologize for being clean shaven today. Like, I imagine that many of the old hands in meetup.ai are probably scared about my health, and I'm all right. I don't have corona, nothing happened. It's just a little ritual that I do from time to time, normally not this close to events. But yeah, that is basically all the information that I wanted to give you. I'm very, very excited to have you all here, our partners from ThoughtWorks, Stephanie and Katarina, and our guest for tonight, or this afternoon, Sukesh Tedla. He is the CEO and co-founder of Unbiased, and he's going to be talking a bit to us about transparency, security in AI, and how basically how that is a problem and how can we kind of solve some of those issues using blockchain. I'm always very excited to bring people from other emerging technologies to meetup.ai. So I am honestly super excited to hear what's going to come. Transparency in AI is one of the huge topics together with explainability. And because nobody comes here to hear me speak, I am wielding the stage to our speaker, Sukesh Tedla. Thank you very much for joining us today. The stage is yours. A digital round of applause.
Thank you very much, Nicholas. And I'm really glad to be here. And thanks for giving me the opportunity, to you and to your partners at ThoughtWorks as well. And I see a lot of people here joining from really global. I see one person from Tokyo. It's really intriguing. So before we get started, let me share my screen. Let's see. I hope you can see my screen now. Perfect. So yeah, I represent Unbiased. It's my startup. So at Unbiased, so what is Unbiased? So it's a transparent and trustworthy data platform for AI. We are building solutions which enable data economies for enterprises. So a bit of introduction about myself. So my name is Sukesh Kumar Tedla. I'm the chairman of Swedish Blockchain Association. And in addition to that, I'm also the CEO and founder of Unbiased. And I also do advisory and a bit of technical architecture for another startup as well, which is called Zeptagram. And I also do blockchain innovation and consulting as well. So I'm 26 years old. I've been in Sweden for almost 6 years now. I'm originally from India. I hope you can recognize that. So my journey with blockchain and AI started in the last 3 years. So today's presentation, I thought I'm not really sure like how familiar is the audience with the blockchain technology. So I thought of introducing you a bit to the blockchain technology, like very basics, and then also speak about the transparency and the core topic of today's. So let's get started. Our mission at Unbiased is to fight biased AI, fake news, and misinformation. So this is the mission we set forth 2 years back. It's me and my girlfriend who started the company. So back then when we started with the company, one of the biggest issues on the internet was fake news and misinformation. And we have seen an increase in the misinformation, and also after realizing that, we soon recognized that we are living in this internet bubble of information. Wherever you go on the internet, whether it's Google or YouTube or any social media platform, you are in that same bubble, which is basically classified by the algorithms. So when we started working on building solutions, sooner or later we realized that we need to use machine learning and AI. But in order to use machine learning and AI, once we get started into that, we face a lot of challenges ourselves. And that's when we realized there is a more fundamental problem on like the technology level rather than on the user level and the data level. So that's how we started Unbiased, and this is our mission today. So before going any further, I want to show this slide, show this graph, which kind of basically explains any thought process of anyone when it comes to new technology adoption, or whether it comes to any new learning something new, etc. So because we are going to discuss different stuff like blockchain, the new technologies like AI, transfer learning, and all that stuff. So I want you to be open-minded. So please ask me questions at the end of the presentation. So it's all new technology. So no one is going to be perfect, including myself. So excuse me if I say something wrong or represent something wrong. But we are here to learn, and we are here to share the knowledge. So please feel free to ask questions. So let's start with the introduction to blockchain technology. Before talking about blockchain, we have to understand why there is a need for blockchain technology. So I really like this picture when I talk about blockchain, or when I present about blockchain, I usually use this picture. This kind of depicts like the socio-economic situations that we live in different countries today. So where we have the banking systems, where we have the governments, but the normal people who are pretty much powerless in the society today. And this kind of depicts the need for blockchain technology as well, because back in 2008, when the financial crisis happened, one of the biggest reasons was the banking system and the lack of transparency in the banking system. So that's when kind of everything started with the blockchain technology. So someone, anonymous person or a group of people called Satoshi Nakamoto, they released a Bitcoin white paper talking about P2P transfer of digital assets, or tokens, or cryptocurrencies that you call today. And in my opinion, this is when like the start of decentralization movement started, and the new era of open source technology has took mainstream. So what exactly is blockchain? So we have today trusted environments where a trusted party is involved when doing a financial transaction, or just doing some kind of trade between a company, between two parties. So, or any e-commerce marketplaces, we always have a centralized trusted authority today, like whether it's a bank, whether it's a regulator, whether it's some certificate providers, etc. So at the end of the day, with the current systems that we have, we still have to trust someone to facilitate the process. When it comes to blockchain-based systems or applications, you have a trustless environment so that you can do P2P transactions, and the trust is ensured with the security of the network and using mathematics and cryptography. So let's see how it exactly works. So as I mentioned, like it's a block and chain, right? So you have blocks and you have a chain which are interlinked with one another. So each block has a unique hash. I think many are familiar with the cryptography or basic functions here. So when you pass a piece of data through an algorithm, it generates a hash which is unique for the data. So even though if you add a small, if you even change or include a space into the data, the hash of the data changes. So in that way, each and every block has a unique hash. Each block contains transactions of different events that happened during that time. And each block is interlinked. As you can see, the previous hash is interlinked with the next block's hash and so forth. So in that way, we are basically gluing together all the blocks in the chain. And these blocks itself are located in almost thousands of computers across, or thousands of servers across the world. So in that way, even though if a hacker or someone tries to hack one of the nodes, the network itself still rectifies and says, okay, this node is wrong. In that way, you have the security of the data and the transparency as well, because only the person who has the access to the private keys can create a transaction and so forth. And once the data is recorded, it's immutable. So you can't change, you can't go back and change something that you already have recorded. So that creates a lot of very good dynamics to enable transparency and trustworthiness. Another interesting topic about blockchain is smart contracts. I'm gonna introduce smart contracts in later of the presentation as well, but like briefly, like when you talk about a contract, it's between two parties, right? So whether it's people or organizations, any kind of contract. So whatever application you are using today, even including Zoom, for instance, you are signing some kind of contract with the organization, right? So each and every contract has certain rules and guidelines, and in the same way, smart contracts are basically designed to incorporate business logic into the algorithm or the code, so that basically when two parties are coming into an agreement, they can use smart contracts and basically come to that agreement, and which is much more secure and transparent, because each and every action that's happening in regards to the smart contract is being recorded on the blockchain. So at the end of the day, you have a complete provenance and transparency, and also the smart way of business logic being integrated into the code as well. So finally, briefly about different types of blockchains out there. So there are public blockchains, there are private blockchains, there are hybrid blockchains. So basically you put a blockchain into different categories based on who can write into the blockchain, who can create transactions, who can read the data from the blockchain, and so forth. So based on that, there are different types of blockchains out there. So let's talk about AI now. So this is what we are here about. So when I started my journey with AI a couple of years back, back then I was really kind of against AI, because I had this mindset from sci-fi movies of thinking that AI is gonna destroy the world and all this kind of crazy stuff. So when I started actually learning about the technology myself, it really got me excited because of different kinds of innovations that are possible and how many problems it can solve in this world today. So so AI kind of is like an umbrella which covers machine learning, deep learning, and NLP. But also nowadays we are seeing something called transfer learning, for instance, which is becoming mainstream these days. Let's see. So when it comes to the age of AI that we live in right now, so one of the key essence of AI is the data, or like the key essential part of the AI is data. Data is like the fuel for the era of AI. So whatever algorithm you want to build, you need some kind of data in order to support it. Whether it's a deep learning model or NLP model or basic machine learning or simple classification or regression, whatever, you need data. Each and every scenario requires different kinds of data. Each and every application needs different levels of data and characteristics and so forth. So let's look into like the key problems of the AI and machine learning industry in general. So the algorithms, there is the saying, right? I think most of you who are here are familiar, I guess, like garbage in, garbage out. So if you're passing an unstructured data in a bad format, your algorithm is going to be in that way as well. So algorithms are only as good as the training data that you train that algorithm on. And if you have the poor data quality, your algorithm's performance is going to be poor as well. And in addition to that, there are a wide range of problems within the AI industry today. Like one of the biggest issues is bias. There are many scenarios, many examples that you can take where bias has caused different problems. I think one of the examples that comes to top of my mind is like the Amazon's HR recruitment algorithm, for instance. It was kind of discriminatory against women, so they had to rectify and train the model again with different kinds of data parameters and so forth. And the another biggest thing is the trust and transparency and fairness. So you built an algorithm, so why should people trust it? Or why should people think it's fair for everyone? Because the algorithms nowadays are used for recruitments, even in judicial processes to give in judicial processes in general, and also like in financial systems as well. So we shouldn't have any discriminatory processes, discriminatory actions with the algorithms. And another biggest issue is the transparency. So let's say you built an algorithm and you're trying to prove that it's trustworthy and so forth, but how can you really do that? How can you really say that you collected this data in a fair manner without damaging any privacy policies or security policies in place with GDPR and so forth? So after doing all of that, it's going to take a lot of time and it's going to cost you quite a lot of money. So most of the developers out there that you see today or that we speak with, most of the time they don't really think of these issues like fairness or transparency in majority of the companies out there. And we are using these algorithms on a day-to-day basis, whether knowingly or unknowingly. So recently I saw this article. This was published in Wired in 2019, December. AI is biased. Here's how scientists are trying to fix it. So this is ImageNet data set, which is kind of the holy grail of the convolution networks and image-related processing. So one of the statements that I found really interesting was the people building these data sets seem to have no idea what's in them, and they are starting to they put together a team right now to actually eliminate the bias or the ratio issues that this data set have. And this data set has been used in many vision algorithms, and this was the basis for many computer vision algorithms. So people who built algorithms on top of this data set doesn't have any clue that this data set has issues, because this data set existed for almost a decade now, and now they found the issues after a decade. Just imagine how many algorithms were built using this data set to recognize people or faces or whatever related to computer vision. So another thing nowadays much popular in the AI industry is the NLP. with the announcements of transfer learning, with the technologies like BERT, for instance, which Google created back in 2018 and 2019, it just became super popular nowadays. And like, I think if you're within this AI industry bubble, you know that the latest announcements of GPT-3, which kind of like a text generator, so which is almost as real as possible. But many of these transfer learning algorithms or transformer models that we call, they are being implemented in different scenarios to facilitate to understand legal agreements or to create legal policies and healthcare as well. So we asked this question to many of the developers, and one of, did you test bias related questions in transformer models? And most of the people are not even aware that these issues exist in these transformer models, because we actually put the models to test as well. You can do it yourself as well. You can go to a website called huggingface.com or .co, huggingface.co. I think I can write in the chat later on, where you can test out these models today. You can just type some kind of text and it will generate the next text. It can predict what you should type or what you're going to type. So oftentimes when you put like critical questions related to gender or race, it kind of is biased towards biased as well. So people should be sure when building these algorithms that their algorithms are not biased towards one side or another. So how can bias creep up in a machine learning pipeline? This is kind of like a general basic pipeline that you see today. So starting from collecting the data from various sources and labeling the data set to training it and iterating it, building a model, and then iterating this process. So in each and every step, we kind of have humans involved from different ethnicities, different genders, and different demographics. So each and every one of us have bias. We are biased, that's for sure. So when building these models and building these data sets, each one of us brings our own bias into these data sets unknowingly. So when these models are put to real life scenarios, these kind of those kind of amplify the inherent biases that it took when building these models. So one has to ensure that there are enough processes and frameworks in place so that their models or the applications that they are building are not biased towards people. So just to summarize the things that we discussed so far, so when it comes to the problems in the AI and machine learning industry, one of the biggest issues is the data privacy, fairness, and bias. And that's the first problem. So the second problem is access to the data sets. So, okay, I want to build this algorithm to satisfy a customer's need or to get this functionality, but where can I find these data sets that I need exactly that fits to my characteristics? There are open data sets, there are private data sets, and so forth. So many of the data sets are secured today because of the regulations, and most of the companies are not sure how to extract value from these data sets in a fair manner as well. And so, okay, let's say like now you have a data set that you found to build an algorithm, but you don't know who built this data set or what were the sources in building this data set. And you don't have a provenance at all. Like most of the open data sets that you find, they don't even mention like who built this data set, what were the characteristics, or how many people contributed to this data set if it was crowdsourced, for instance. So without having a data provenance that you can track over the time, it would be really hard to actually show that your model or application you're building is transparent and trustworthy. So let's see what are the potential solutions or like the things that are happening in the industry right now. So one of the biggest trends that we see is the marketplaces and data exchange frameworks. where many of the countries and the governments are working right now, especially in EU and also on the World Economic Forum. So they're trying to build something called a cross-border data exchange framework. And they're trying to build this kind of a white paper right now, and also a framework so that people in different countries can trade data or exchange data of people in different organizations as well. Because with more and more privacy guidelines and regulations these days, many countries and many applications are being limited to store data within that country. For instance, like with GDPR, you can't export the data outside Europe, for instance. And the same thing's happening with many other countries as well. It's same in China, it's now happening in India and also in US. So yeah, one has to have a framework because if each and every country or each and every continent has their own model, it would be really difficult for people to innovate or exchange ideas or information. So we need these kind of frameworks. And the other thing is bias, platform bias evaluation frameworks as well. So there is a lot of research that's done by a team at IBM and many open source developers. So anyone can check it out right now. It's called AI Fairness 360. Excuse me. And Google also implemented something similar to address the problem, something called what if tool. So you can search these and try them out. They're really super cool actually, because they kind of show you where the problem exists, but also kind of suggest you how to solve them as well. And the third biggest issue is the transparency and trust. So this is where, for instance, some of the platforms that we use or frameworks that we use today in building the algorithms or models, for instance, like TensorFlow is working on machine learning fairness model to kind of like show exactly different statistics related to a model and so forth. And I know I forgot to mention here, there is another open source community working called OpenMind, which is also working on decentralized frameworks currently to basically solve the same issues that I just described. So we spoke about a lot of things till now, but let me kind of explain like how we at our organization are trying to address this on a much more broader sense with the blockchain technology. So what we have today is a product called Unbiased Data Marketplace, which is a blockchain-based data collection and annotation engine to generate unbiased and diverse training data sets in real time so that we can help out algorithms or the developers that are building these algorithms. So as we say, every algorithm needs quality training data, and which is trustworthy and transparent. So let me show you a simple workflow of our application that we are building right now. So let's say you are an enterprise or a developer who is interested in getting a data set. So you come to the platform, you specify the requirements, and the workforce from all over the world who matches your requirements can work on your data set. But at the same time, we have, at the same time, we can, in our marketplace, you also have the developers and researchers who are building the algorithms and deploying them on the Unbiased marketplace. You can take advantage of those algorithms as well and build your data sets in a much more efficient way and quality proof. So at the end of the day, in comparison to the existing solutions, what you get with this platform is that you're not only getting the data sets, but you also get like a authenticity proof certificate, which basically shows data provenance and so forth. And then you also have the insights and analytics related to your data set. But also with this human in the loop approach, we are also empowering people in different parts of the world as well. Let me show you the platform flow a bit. So let's say you wanted to build an algorithm related to computer vision. So you need a data set of, let's take simple example of classifying different kinds of cars, for instance. So it's like an image classification data set that you require. So you have this requirement today and you come to the platform, you follow the template and you follow the steps in the process, specify the requirements, and that's it. That's all you have to do. And basically starting from then, the workers from all over the world can work on these data sets, and you can basically track what's happening with your project, who is working on it, from which parts of the world, and are there real people, because that's one of the important questions as well. There are lots of bots in these platforms. So it's gonna basically look like this at the end of the day. So let's take one simple example here. So we have one picture of the cars which are being annotated, for instance. So you get like metadata of the results, but also you have a complete history and provenance. Okay, when was this task created? Who contributed to this task? Which workers? And when was this approved, and so forth. So these actions are documented on blockchain. So at the end of the day, you have a complete history, complete provenance of what happened with this particular data set. So that kind of also increases the value of the data set, because now anyone, let's say another company coming at a later stage and wanted to purchase your data set. So now you can clearly prove that these many people worked on it. These are the characteristics of this data set and so forth. So finally, you have this certificate. And this is something I got to know recently, that even Google is working on a similar they're calling it I think data cards and model cards. So the data card basically describes the different characteristics of the data, including licenses, what was the purpose of that data set, who created the data set, kind of same what we are doing. But also model cards are basically the same way. What was the intention for this model? How was this model trained on, and so forth. But one of the unique things about using blockchain-based technology is that you can actually audit this information. So if you think of like the solution from Google, for instance, I can just write whatever I want and publish it. At the end of the day, no one can really argue what I said there. So you can't really trust that information in that sense. So in order to establish a complete transparency in the process, you should be able to go back in time and see what happened with this particular data set or model. So that's what's being achieved using blockchain technology in our case. So so far we talked about the data collection and the data annotations. These are like the first steps in building algorithm or a model. So there are a lot of other steps. You have to clean the data. You need much more privacy related solutions. You need so there are much more new concepts coming these days with automated machine learning and training functionalities, or privacy focused training, or federated learning, for instance. So all of this new solutions or new technologies that are yet to become mainstream still are not addressing the fundamental issue of transparency and trust. So using a blockchain-based solution, basically, as we saw in this before slide here, so each and every action that's happening, starting from the creation of data request to actually getting the data set out. So each and every action is being documented on this blockchain. So you can go back in time and see what happened and so forth. So what we are working on is a complete end-to-end solution. So when building an algorithm, you need an end-to-end pipeline. So this is what we are trying to achieve with this framework. So today we have the first three solutions here, like the ground truth, human intelligence, but also the data collection part and the data annotations part and so forth. And now we are bringing much more additional frameworks related to synthetic data or bias related frameworks. I just got to know from my researcher that is working, like I just got to know like last week, that she managed to build a model right now which can just take the input data set and can predict what kind of biases does this data set have, potential biases, and how you can address it. Maybe by generating more synthetic data, or maybe you need much more data related to women or men or any other category and so forth. Okay, you have the data, but now what will you do? You need some kind of automated framework where you can evaluate against different algorithms and so forth. So that's where we bring in these additional frameworks from ML Flow or TensorFlow Extended, so that we can you don't have to go to 10 different places to achieve what you are trying to achieve. You should be able to come to one platform and get all the things solved from there. And as we mentioned here, we are basically enabling the end-to-end flow with the complete audit trail of what happened. So starting from your idea to actually getting into production, you have a complete audit trail of what happened. So this can not only help you with with building more trust among your consumers or among your users, but also maybe can potentially secure you from the future regulations that are possibly coming soon. So some of the use cases in building these kind of frameworks are, so you can achieve quite a lot of stuff. So for instance, you can build a crowdsourced data collection data set, which is focused on pollution data, for instance. So I have a friend who has been working on this application called Open Litter Map, which is, I think everyone can check it out right now, openlittermap.com. He's based in Ireland, so he created this platform a while back. So there are, I think, more than 30 or 40 countries. People from these countries are contributing in order to build a data set of litter on streets. So basically, this data set can be used by smart city initiatives across different municipalities, and can optimize the cleaning processes in the cities. But at the same time, the people are being also incentivized as well for doing something good for their local community. So this is kind of the things that we want to achieve with this platform. But also, like, the whole process is transparent. He also built it using blockchain technology, so that now anyone can trust this data, and you can also validate that there aren't any duplicates of the data as well. And one other good examples, or one other trending topic right now within the data or big data and AI industry is the mobility sector, right? So more and more cars, with Tesla leading the charge, becoming autonomous. So autonomous and self-driving, right? So each and every car has huge amounts of data these days. Like, there are lots of cameras, lots of sensors. I'm actually part of this working group called MOBI, which is Mobility Open Blockchain Initiative, where we are working on establishing a standard for data marketplaces in the mobility sector. So how can you take advantage of the data that you are generating from a car and actually use the data from in a different parts of the world, or building some kind of model from it. One other cool idea or like solution that we thought of is also, like, there are lots of pollution sensors these days in each and every car. So what if we can crowdsource this data from the cars and aggregate it and use the data to actually identify the localized pollution and predict what's going to happen using AI. We can predict what's going to happen and how is the pollution and how you can divert the traffic and so forth. So there are lots of things that you can do once you have a good structured data which you can trust. And yeah, so this is what we are trying to achieve, and this is what you can achieve when you are working with the blockchain-based solution. I'm not going to go into services. So these are pretty straightforward industry services in the AI industry. So finally, let's discuss about the timing and need for these kind of applications or solutions, and why you should really address it once again. So nowadays, like almost 50% of the world's population have a smartphone. So we use different applications, we interact with different algorithms each and every day. So one or the other day, maybe in near future, potentially, you will have to start understanding what's an AI, or how does it work. And there are many initiatives across EU countries right now to educate people. For instance, we have an initiative in Sweden, leading by AI Innovation of Sweden, who is basically, the target of this institution is that they have to educate 1 million Swedes by 2023 or 2025. So that's the target, because they believe that potentially in near future that AI might take over the jobs. So you have to, the workforce has to be adapted according to the requirements. And also global AI market is increasing at a rapid pace right now. Even though with Corona, like you might have seen many topics about AI algorithms predicting different kinds of what do you call different kinds of diagnosis, for instance. And I think if I remember correctly, like one of the algorithms built by some research university in US, I guess, like they were the first ones to actually decode the RNA sequences and predict what kind of diagnosis should people have. And when you have these kind of, and there might be lots of data sets out there now related to coronavirus, so you should be able to trust them. And I was talking with a healthcare facility, I think it was in Spain, a couple of months back in the March or April. They had lots of data about people, but they weren't sure like how they can share the data with others because of the privacy considerations and so forth. So, if they had a diverse data, or if when you're trying to build these algorithms, you need much more diverse data to solve this crazy problem that we have right now. So yeah, this is what the data marketplaces can achieve. And once you have the transparency and trust in the data, you can be much more trustworthy in the results of that algorithm as well. And there are increasing concerns about fairness and transparency across different countries. I can take lots of examples. So one was in US. So I think it was in some state, and now there is a regulation that you have to get your algorithms audited if you're using algorithms to recruit people, so that the algorithms are not biased towards one group of people. So there are lots of things that are happening these days. And EU also launched their white paper, basically talking about transparency and trust. You can see the title of the white paper. Back in February, they launched their white paper. So this is one of the key things that we might see potential regulations for AI industry in the next 2 to 3 years. And many are moving towards data economies. So all the major companies are relying on data and they are extracting value from the data. So if you're an organization, or if you are working towards AI-based or big data-based solutions, you have to identify how you can extract value from the data in a much more transparent and secure way, so that your audience or the users also feel are rewarded in the same fashion. And more circular economy and user-centric approaches these days. So you have to ensure that you give the rights to the user and you are transparent about how you're using their data to monetize your business and so forth. So all of this can be achieved using a blockchain-based, smart contracts-based solutions. So I think that's pretty much it. Finally, I just want to end the presentation and saying, like, in God we trust, and all others bring data to the table. So thank you very much for giving me the opportunity, and I would be glad to take questions.
Thank you very much, Sukesh. So before I go into the questions from the audience, just a reminder, send your questions to Slido using the code. I think that Stephanie can kind of send the code again. And then first, a question from my side then. We really like to work with digital health here. And one of the main issues that is coming to be, especially in well-connected places like Berlin and Paris, is not the lack of healthcare data, but rather issues about transparency, and especially the mistrust of what anonymous data means. So a lot of people don't trust the traditional definition. They don't believe that their data is truly anonymous. So do you feel that using blockchain and using other technologies like that, we can be able to not only provide transparency and provide the security, but also emotionally make people feel more safe about sharing their data?
Absolutely. I can take multiple examples here because I know a company based in Stockholm here. I think it's called CareChain. They were working on a concept called it's a blockchain-based solution where the patient's records are kind of encrypted, and you can basically give the permissions to different organizations when someone is requesting your data, for instance. So everything is encrypted and secured. So you have the complete authority on with whom you want to share your data with, and in exchange for what, if any, as well. So I think building technology and applications doesn't just solve the problem, but you have to kind of integrate these principles in a much more visual way and interactive way, so that you can not only say that you are transparent and you are trustworthy, but you should actually show in reality as well.
So the people still don't believe that those kinds of things happen, but I am originally an economist, right? And there's some micro data in Germany that the only way that you can use is going inside of an institute using their computer under watch. And then when you're done, you kind of like, you take your model away and that's it. Like the data cannot leave the building, cannot leave the computer. There's somebody watching you all the time. And then you can imagine how limiting it is to do this. And funny enough, German researchers actually use Swedish data to do the same researches because it's easier. And they hope that Swedish citizens are close to Germans. So that is how absurd things got. A question that we normally have when we bring blockchain to an AI meetup is, why blockchain? Is there what is the single thing that you can use through this technology that you couldn't technically do through more secure servers or just a different application inside of AI?
I think it's, rather than speaking much more on a technological sense, I think it's much more the way the essence of the blockchain and the way the reason for it was built on, the foundation and the principles. I think that really matters quite a lot. And if you look at the Bitcoin networks or Ethereum networks today out there, they are the world's most secure networks. You can't really even hack them, even with the supercomputer today, because there's a lot of computational power involved in these networks today. Let's say you are like, there are companies building the private blockchain solutions or encrypted solutions, but you still have to rely on a centralized party today. So whether it's an organization like Google or Amazon Cloud and so forth. So they doesn't seem to have the best they doesn't seem to stand as the best examples in the industry with their past. So at the end of the day, even though there are many technologies that exist, I would really prefer blockchain-based solution because it's transparent, it's public, it's auditable, and it's immutable, and I don't have to rely on one centralized authority.
Got it. Do you think that that's also the future of AI moving forward, at least in certain industries?
I see I see trends in many organizations, actually, even in Microsoft and Google. I know like Microsoft is working on blockchain and AI based solution as well. Something kind of similar to what we are doing, actually. Yeah, I think even AWS is trying to bring up different solutions, and everyone understands the need for transparency, fairness, and bias. But building the solutions, educating users, educating customers, it takes a lot of time and effort. And if your principles are wrong and if your past represents a different picture, you can't really go out and say, okay, you can use our solutions, it's trustworthy and transparent, when you can't really prove it.
Understand. So I'm basically open here for questions from the audience. I don't know if Slido is not working because I cannot see the questions. So if you're trying to put a question through Slido and it's not working for any reason, just send it over here on the Zoom chat as well, because I'm not sure. Meanwhile, I'll just talk about her. I'm happy enough to, to take that role. And I think the next point that is always interesting is about monetization, right? So how can basically users monetize their data by sharing their data with some AI algorithms? At the same point, there is a bit of blowback on this that people can monetize their data, sure, but people also are looking for the best product or the most convenient product, right?
Yeah.
So do you think that I think blockchain still scares a lot of users. So do you think that there's still a lot of work to be done on educating users on exactly what it is? Unfortunately, for those not working in cryptocurrency, I think that the cryptocurrency connection more hinders than helps the work.
I completely agree. Like it all depends on how you build the solution and how you present the user interface. So if you go to like our website or elsewhere, like you don't really see much mention of blockchain actually, because it just confuses people. People are familiar with user ID and passwords, so why not just stick with that and do the blockchain magic behind the scenes and just explain briefly about it and potential, like it has to be like a process. So you have to educate them eventually, like you will learn about blockchain one or the other day, because nowadays even my mother is asking about Bitcoins these days. So it's becoming mainstream because of the institutions that we have and the fast-paced internet that we have right now. So I think if one is building a blockchain-based application, whether it's for AI or any other industry, I would say, I would always say, like, forget about all the drama with the private keys, public keys, cryptocurrencies. You don't really need those, like, to really show to the user and make things complicated. You can just keep things simple and do the things normally, but still use the technology behind the scenes.
I think there's a great advice, especially like for those of us that come from Berlin. Berlin has a very big blockchain ecosystem, and I always give plus points to startups that tell me how they solve a problem, and then they tell me that they solve a blockchain. So first tell me what you're doing that is so great, and then tell me how you're doing it. So we have questions here from Alex. Let's see. Isn't the security of blockchain in a decentralized network rather than computing power? Who holds these blockchains? So who would be holding the blockchains that would be using for this kind of work?
So each blockchain has different kinds of principles and the way it's architected or architectured. So if you look at the Bitcoin network, which is public, even you can just connect a node to the network and just download all the blockchain data. So everyone can access that data today. It's not private or anything like that. There are other networks like using Hyperledger, which is much more private focused blockchains, which is limited between only a certain group of organizations which control that blockchain and so forth. So it kind of really depends on what kind of blockchain is it, who are using this blockchain and so forth. So most of the public blockchains out there, anyone can just access it. And the security aspect of the blockchain comes because of the decentralized nature of it and the distributed nature of it, because you have thousands of nodes having the same set of data across all these nodes. So even though if one of the nodes is compromised, the other nodes in the network still ensure the security of the network and the immutability of the network.
Cool. So somebody here is asking for a use case. I don't know if you know that one, but is blockchain used to follow the process of food production? I imagine, like, honestly, knowing blockchain, like food production, like farm to table almost, like
Walmart is doing that actually. I think they were using IBM's or Microsoft's solution to track food. So if you scan a barcode on any of their Walmart products, so you can see what happened starting from the farm to the supply chain, the whole supply chain process. And EU is kind of also looking at different supply chain based solutions right now. I know the blockchain that we are building on, there is a solution from Spain. I think one of the popular ciders in Spain, they actually built a tracing solution on blockchain now. So that now anyone who can who are drinking the ciders can just scan it and see what happened with that cider. Where were the fruits coming from, or who produced the fruits? Where was it manufactured? Was it in correct conditions, in the temperatures and so forth? So
that's actually pretty cool. And for the people that think like, but how much money is involved in faking where food comes from? And I just remind myself of a Canadian friend that says that they still have gangs that steal maple syrup in Canada because it's extremely expensive. So they literally rob it directly from the train, or they make like fake maple syrup saying that it's Canadian. So a lot of food stuff, from sourdough ham in Spain all the way to whiskey or cider, they have an interest in showing that whatever they are citing, it's true.
Italian cheese, for instance.
Italian cheese.
Yeah.
There was also an issue, I think, last year with, no, 2 years ago, with Italian olive oil actually being Chinese, and it was only bottled in Italy. So it's a lot of good stuff. So another question from the audience here: is the proof of no bias through a global workforce for every data set not extremely expensive, or is it based on voluntary participation of people?
The global workforce, it's a voluntary thing. So anyone who's interested to contribute to a specific data set can contribute towards that. And when it comes to the bias framework itself, what we do today is, like, once you have this data set aggregated from this workforce, we pass it through different kinds of analytics and bias frameworks, which will be open source. So those can be audited. And the results from these bias frameworks are documented on the blockchain and documented on the certificate of the data set. So when someone is buying this data set, they know exactly what kind of analytics does this data or insights does this data set have, what was the bias issues. And if I use this data set in building a model at a later stage, I can also prove that, okay, this was the data set I used, which was unbiased and evaluated in this fashion.
A friend of mine also sent a question here on WhatsApp, don't know why, but for people who are not in the blockchain ecosystem, but rather on the AI ecosystem, is there any beginner tools that you would recommend, or projects that they should take a look if they're interested in coupling blockchain technology into their traditional AI work?
I would suggest you to check out OpenMind.
Andrew Trask, right? Isn't that his project or one of his projects?
I don't remember the name, but it's like an open foundation that it's open source. And it's based on PyTorch and traditional frameworks as well. So they're doing quite a lot of good stuff, and they're actually doing most of the work that we want to do, but we could potentially integrate into our platform as well. It's open source. So at the end of the day, you need to have end-to-end solutions. So that's what we're trying to do. I think a good start would be OpenMind. And if you just want to learn more about like the bias related issues, I think you can check out huggingface.co, where you can test out different problems related to NLP, but also try out IBM's tool, actually. Bias tool. I think it's AI Fairness 360, it's called. Check it out. I think that's super cool, actually, because there you can test out different examples.
Got it. So just saying, I'm going to ask a couple of the few last questions to Sukesh. If you have any questions, or if your question was not properly answered, just send it in Trello or send it in the chat. Before I go to the last round, I just want to ask for the community, Sukesh, what's the best way to contact you? If people want to talk to you about today, or they would just want to know more about the work of Unbiased, what is the best way to reach out to you?
You can find me on LinkedIn. I would respond as soon as possible. And also like email, as you can see on the screen, just contact at unbiased.cc, so you can email there as well. So anywhere, like, you can find me pretty much. If you just search my name, you will find me in Google.
So my second question, and that is very Digital Meetup AI related, where are you talking from? I never asked.
I'm actually talking from Sweden. I live in Sweden. Yeah, been here for 6 years almost.
No, but where in Sweden? Like, what town are you in?
It's Gothenburg. It's
Nice.
Göteborg. Yeah.
Oh, cool. Awesome. So if there's no other questions from the audience, I would check the chat as well, and then I would do my final question. So my final question is actually a double question. The first one is, what are the limits of blockchain technology still today when it comes to the task of transparency in AI? And the second part is, what is a growing trend in AI that worries you? And why do you think that we should care about it and worry about it too?
So the first one, when it comes to blockchain limitations, I would say many. Because it's still pretty young when it comes to the smart contracts technology itself. It's like, I think 3 or 4 years old now. So it's still pretty young in that sense. So there are lots of issues related to scalability of blockchains as well, because the data is being stored across all the nodes in the network. So how can you really scale it when there is like terabytes of data? And over the time, like there might be less and less nodes who actually owns this data. So there are those issues. So there are many researchers going on in parallel. But I know like for a few, like the blockchains that we choose to build on top of try to address these issues to a certain extent. And these blockchains are like one of the best right now in the industry and the most used blockchains as well. And the second thing about the AI concerns me is the lack of access to many data points or the AI models. I think now when we saw from the OpenAI team recently that they released this huge model as a service, and the GPT-3 model, which they closed source. They call themselves OpenAI, but they still closed source the model. And this model is also pretty biased as well. So even though they kind of put a disclaimer that this model is biased and have to be used in bit more evaluation, most of the developers and most of the applications that are being built are not really considering these things, and that's really concerning because you don't know, like as a person of color myself, I'm not sure like if I'm being evaluated fairly by a model which was trained on a particular data set which doesn't include Indians or something like that. So that kind of concerns me, and that's the reason like I started working on this together with my co-founder and my team. Yeah.
That's actually a very, very good point, and I think a point that a lot of AI practitioners will relate. So basically that was it. Somebody just asked now about if the slides will be shared. The recording is definitely going to be shared. So we are recording this and it will go up in the YouTube channel for meetup.ai. So Cash can also share the video with, like, he was also going to get a copy. And yes, so if there's no other points, I will thank you again, Sukesh, for coming in and joining us. I hope, like with so many other topics that we have here in Meetup AI, that one day we have the chance to have this in person again, but also to maybe sit down a couple of experts together and try to have a roundtable about this as well, because transparency and data accessibility in AI is such an interesting topic, that something that really is at the core of a lot of the issues of especially beginners or people who are trying to still hack it out, like new prototypes in AI. So it's something that really, really pains them. So I hope that we can revisit this question once again. If you like this topic, if you want to see different topics, let me know. I also put my LinkedIn on the chat, just like I put Sukesh as well. Any feedback is great. Any idea is great. And I will try my best to listen to it. Elon Musk said that he cannot do this month, but I'll keep trying. Maybe he'll one day call in from Mars and everything will be all right. Yeah. But with that, then I will close the event for today. Sukesh, thank you so much for coming. Stephanie, Katarina, thank you very much for helping us out. Tech and ThoughtWorks for having the patience for still be working with me after 2 years. And I wish all of you a great weekend. Great sun over here in Berlin. I hope wherever you are, you're also having beautiful, great weather. And I see you next time. We don't have an event scheduled so far, but if you just join our Meetup community on Meetup, we will definitely be talking. We're probably going to be announcing one next week. All right. So for everyone, have a great day, a great weekend, and I see you soon.
Yeah. Don't forget to follow Unbiased. Take care.
Have a great one, everyone.
People.